Welcome to Advance with Mike Acker, the podcast designed to help entrepreneurs, business leaders, and professionals alike break through barriers by improving their practical leadership skills and increasing confidence in speaking. Your host is a best-selling author, executive coach, and founder of the Advance Public Speaking School and Advantage Publishing Group, two companies dedicated to providing an edge for leaders. Find out more about Mike at mikeacker.com. Now here's your host, Mike Acker.
Well, I'm so excited. Today I got Dov Gordon, and Dov Gordon helps consultants get ideal clients by really working on these under the radar, becoming an under the radar leaders in their industry. So you can find out more about him in profitablерelationships.com. But we're going to have a great dialogue. If you're not a consultant, this is going to relate to you in terms of your own role in a corporate job, or in management, or just becoming a leader in your field. So we're gonna have a lot of fun and take some notes here, and make sure then you go back to profitablerelationships.com to check out Dov. So Dov, thanks so much for joining me on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Looking forward to this because you and I had a good conversation and just our preliminary conversation, and you brought up this idea of corporate refugees. And I am a corporate refugee. So can you help us understand a little bit of what that means? And then tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are.
Sure. Corporate refugee is somebody who did really well in the corporate world, or moderately well. And you get to that point where you think to yourself, well, I love whatever it is that you're good at. And I'm a little bit tired of having the artificial and sometimes legitimate constraints placed upon me that you have in the corporate world. I'm going to go out and do this on my own. I'll go out and get some clients. I did really well with what I'm doing. No reason why I shouldn't be able to do really well on my own, and I won't have all these limitations. So you go out on your own. And there are a few people who succeed right off the bat. They just they just take it and they're able to run with it, and they're doing really well. The overwhelming majority, though, discover over time, slowly, it dawns on them, or it really comes to sink in, that running your own business is not necessarily that it's harder or easier than succeeding in the corporate world. It's different. It requires a different skill set. It requires different ways of thinking about things, different ways of going about things. And just because you had a valuable skill set inside the corporate world, it's not necessarily enough to market and sell your expertise from the outside. And that's, the corporate refugee is something that, unfortunately with COVID, many people are becoming corporate refugees before they plan to. And I've just found that a lot of people who are coming from the corporate world, they don't necessarily resonate with a lot of the very common marketing approaches that we all come across online. You got to become a content marketing ninja. You got to create all this content and get it out there and post and comment on other people's content. And, you got to create a Facebook ad to an evergreen webinar funnel. And, there's just really, there's so many things that everybody is saying, this is what you have to do. And a while back, I was reflecting on all this because while I'm not a corporate refugee myself, never having qualified to hold a job, apparently, I have a set of skills that it took me quite a number of years to be able to figure out, how do I actually turn that into a consistent flow of clients? And I remember looking at all these the online experts saying, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I was thinking to myself, none of this really feels real to me. It just doesn't feel right to me, but people really seem to be doing this. And then I also came across other people like me who are really good at what they did, but they didn't feel like they were the natural charismatic guru type. They weren't interested in putting themselves out there. Again, nothing wrong with that. It's just not right for every personality. And I started to ask myself the question, I think, well, when, you see that AdWords could work and blogging could work and podcasting could work and webinars could work and, everything could work and everything could fail. I know because I've tried a number of it. Some of it worked, some of it failed. I see other people, they've tried things that some worked, some failed. And I realized that most of us were asking the wrong question. People are going around asking, what should I do? What works? And I realized that's the wrong question. The right question is, well, let's assume that everything works sometimes and everything fails other times. Why does it work when it works? And why does it fail when it fails? And if we can understand that, we get to a point where we don't need 5 or 10 or 20 different ways to create a consistent flow of our ideal clients. We really just need one, maybe a second. Because if you can get to the underlying leverage points and say, oh, this is why people raise their hand and reach out and respond. And if I can do that in my own way without having to make myself feel like, like I'm just mimicking somebody else, that's a problem I have. And a lot of people who, really masters of their craft, they just not comfortable with the idea of just copying somebody else. It has to feel real to you. So I just came to understand that it doesn't have to be that way. And it turns out for me, I'm an introvert, but a lot of my growth ended up coming as a result of building genuine relationships with people around the world that I'd never met in person through what I now call an alchemy network. And that's really what I focus on now, is helping other consultants, experts, professional service firms, or even larger firms to create their own alchemy networks, which is a way of becoming what I call an under the radar leader in your industry. And that's the story in brief.
I love it.
Any way you want.
I was thinking about two different thoughts in here. So many of the people who are part of my podcast or the YouTube are either in the corporate field. A lot of the personal clients that I work with are upper level professionals in senior management or CEOs or on the trajectory to go there. But then I have a lot of people who are the doctor, the dentist, the chiropractor, the physical therapist. And from both of these, many of them have told me at different times, I want to get better at my job, but then I want to get out and do my own. Even this morning, I didn't put this together until you were talking about it. I had a call 3 hours ago. This is my sixth call today. But 3 hours ago, I was working with one gentleman, and he specifically said, I'm in this corporate position. They have me earmarked for chief marketing officer, but I'm wondering if I should get out. And he was asking about my journey from corporate America, executive leadership, senior director positions to consultation. And all of it is exactly what you're talking about. So I think this is so relevant to a lot of people because like him, he said, should I get out? Should I go out and do this? And you nailed it when you said, you full on, I'm going to have to make sure he watches this because you full on talked about what he's going through. Hey, I'm good at this. I'm doing this here, but how do I turn it into something else? So if you're listening, you're thinking, I'm thinking about going out and just doing my own thing. A lot of consultants, and so Dov and I are both one now, make it look like, hey, this is easy, but it's
just do what I did. Anyone could do it.
Right. It's not. And so people have said, I have this book on the shelf right here, Speak with No Fear. People say, well, I'll just write a book. How do you do that? Well, it's not easy. And not everybody can do it. Not everybody has a skill. So I love what you're talking about, these profitable relationships. And where was it that you came across this idea that, you know what, this is how I'm going to go? How did you find this course for your success?
Going back somewhere between 10 and 15 years ago, I don't remember exactly, I was shifting from doing corporate consulting, where I was doing strategy and organizational development work of one kind or another for, I'd say, mid-sized companies between 10 and $200 million in sales. I had a CEO peer advisory group for CEOs of that size companies. I know it's a range and they're different, but worked out well for a while. But I realized that I had figured some things out while starting to get those projects and building that CEO peer advisory group. And I realized that there were a lot of people like me, but just a few years and certain whatever number of skills behind me. And I realized that I can help them. So I shifted my focus and I was thinking, well, how am I going to reach these people? How am I going to find more people like that? And at the time I decided that what I was going to do is what we'd call joint venture teleseminars. I'd find other people who already have email lists or audiences of business owners, small business owners, consultants, experts, professional service firms. And I would do a teleseminar, and they would send out an email to their list, and that would help. And then say, hey, go sign up for Dov's teleseminar at the time. Now we do other things, webinar or other, I actually, we have some video training people can watch anytime. And then go watch what Dove has, and I'd recommend it. And then that's how I grew my list. And then I might do the same for them. So what I realize is, I was thinking, well, where am I going to find such people who are savvy to this type of approach, who have the right values because they're not afraid of promoting somebody that they may see as a competitor? Where am I going to find such people? So I joined several different online communities, and I didn't really find what I was looking for. It was remarkable. Every community was a little bit different. I remember one where it was really just a big community of backslapping. Everybody was cheerleading and backslapping, and I thought to myself, these people aren't serious, because they're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to get anywhere but just having a community of backslappers. You need people to tell you that what's not good, and to be an example of what's possible next. So I didn't like that. And there were a few others that weren't right for me for whatever reason. So I thought to myself, well, I'll just start my own little group. So I reached out to a handful of people that I'd met online over the years, a course that we took together or somewhere else. And I said, hey, this is what I want to do. You want to join me? And we went from 5 people at the beginning to a couple of hundred members, just under 200 members over a number of years. And included in those 200, almost 200 members were people who, when I was getting started, I in my mind, I put them up on a pedestal thinking, well, they're so far ahead of me. Why would they ever want to talk to me? But they ended up as members in my network, a couple of years, a few years down the line. And that's been great for everybody. Great for them, great for me. My network has been worth millions of dollars to some of the members, and hundreds of thousands of to many others. And I ran it for free for the first 8 years or so, and then a couple of years ago I switched to a modest annual $1,000 a year. And I really that was something that I resisted. I was afraid of losing all those great relationships. I was afraid that we'd go from just under 200 members to somewhere between 10 and 20. But fortunately, but the reality was I felt I needed to do it because I saw that about half of our members were active and the other half were inactive. I needed to know who really wants to be there. And when we made that shift, fortunately, we didn't end up with just 10 or 20. We ended up with about 45. That was a couple of years ago. We've continued to grow, doing very nicely and growing steadily. And it's almost all other members continuously nominating new people. And I'd say that the secret to this, what I call an alchemy network, to the success here is curation and conversation. I curate and I enable conversations. We do have a modest $1,000 to $2,000 a year, but there are mastermind groups where you got to pay. You pay $25,000 to get in. It's easier to get into those than it is to get into mine. All right. A couple of months ago, I turned away somebody who based on his story, I estimated is worth about $100 million. I turned him away, not because he wasn't a good person. It wasn't a fit. He didn't seem to get what we were doing and the way we're supporting each other and how the relationships are built. And it wasn't a fit. So, I'd rather have somebody doing low 6 figures who gets it. That person can be more valuable to the others in the network than somebody, who's worth much more or even has a much bigger business who doesn't get what we're doing. So that's the beginning. And that brings us to where we are. And, about a year and a half ago, I realized that something else I've been kind of pushing off is that I can help other people do this. I can help other people create their own alchemy networks of potential clients. And and now I have got clients who are building a network and using that as a way of getting their foot in the door in large corporations to build relationships and land very high value projects. And that's kind of the focus of my own coaching and consulting, is narrowed to helping people become under the radar industry leaders by designing and building and leading their own alchemy network. So there are different ways of going about it, different models, but essentially that's it. And I would say this though, that, I said I resisted making that narrowing shift. And I think that's a very common theme, not just with me, but with many people, is that we have this sense that I should probably go in that direction. But then the brain gives us all the reasons why it may not work, And then we resist because we haven't done it yet. But eventually, again, I got to, like with the decision to charge, I got to the point where I realized, like, this is really what I need to do. What was holding me back there was that I was thinking, well, it's so easy. Like, I'm not doing anything that's hard. Like, it's not complicated what I'm doing. Anybody can do what I'm doing. If I shift and focus my whole, business, my little firm here, my little agency on helping other people become under the radar leaders by building alchemy networks, like what am I going to, I'll just do this, that, and that, and they'll go and do it. And what I'm like, right. So I started slowly. I started working with some clients who were working with me anyway and said, hey, I think this would work for you. And over the months and over the last year and a half, I've been working with a few more people and a few more people. And as I'm doing that, of course, I'm getting questions that I wouldn't have realized were issues. And I start to see how, yes, I get in my own way and these clients are getting in their own way. And it's not very difficult, but over the years, I built up a skill set and processes and systems and approaches, but I was a victim of the curse of the expert, as they call it. Mm. The expert's curse is that what looks easy to you, you don't value enough because you figure, well, everybody else can do this. Well, I must not be valuable enough. Now, there's another curse, which is certain people who've got nothing and they're convinced they've got everything. But, fortunately, that's not my curse. So I can't talk about it.
I tell the same thing in terms of confidence. If you want confidence life, because so much of what I do is about confidence, is if you just get arrogant, it's a perfect recipe for confidence. You will never struggle if you're arrogant. If you think you're better than everybody else, you'll have confidence. The problem is you won't connect. You won't have the impact. Yeah. And that's exactly what you're talking about there. The person who has nothing but thinks he has everything. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. So we have this corporate refugee idea. People going, okay, let me go out and maybe leave the corporate world. Been there, done that. And sometimes it's nerve-wracking to do. But somebody does it. And you and I were talking, I was telling you about some of my own clients that are corporate refugees, and they've moved from these great companies and now they're launching their consultancies and they're finding exactly what you're talking about, which that led to this whole idea of where do we get clients from. And ClickFunnels is great for some people. We've all been a victim of ClickFunnels. I joined a coaching program, loved so much of the coaching program. One aspect that I didn't resonate was the ClickFunnel aspect to it. It just didn't really jive with what I was trying to do. But I tried some on, and Dov, I got to tell you what I did. This is awful. I followed their recipe, which is, you take your mailing list and you send out the whole thing like, hey, and I have someone who works with me. Hey, MA, follow up with Dov. I haven't heard back from him. Is everything okay with him? It's so manipulative. And I've had that email and I sent it out. And afterwards, I was so embarrassed because I did the clicky, funnely, clickbaity thing. And honestly, I was embarrassed. It's not who I feel like I am. So now we send out emails. We do some webinars, but nothing like we do one email per week. But a lot of people are wondering, should I do that? Is that the only way to do it? And I love that you said, no, there's another way to do it. And if that is what you're doing and that's what works for you, hey, great. We're not saying that don't do that, but there are other ways. You don't have to do that. I'm also not a great LinkedIn, Twitter person all the time. So I love that you're presenting this other way, the Alchemy Network. You do this, you run your own Alchemy Network, and where you're valuing, you're kind of like a mastermind, and you're teaching other people to do it. You said that there's 3 kinds of members for an Alchemy Network. What does that mean? So if somebody's interested in this and kind of wanting to know more and maybe even wanting to seek a conversation or just wanting to gain from you and try something on their own, what are the 3 kinds of members?
Sure. I'm actually currently running 2 networks, and I'll explain. So 2 out of the 3. But I did put up some totally free video training on this and some more. I don't know how much it will cover. And is it all right if I just share that link? Because
yeah,
it's at profitablelationships.com/Mike Acker, ACKER.
Perfect.
Right.
Perfect.
And that's in your honor, Mike. So,
and I saw here too, because you and I got connected through someone that we've been connected with, both with Marina Barayeva, and she was on my show recently. She's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she's in any of your networks, but she's the type of person who just, instead of just going from place to place, wants to connect people.
Yeah. No, because she really did. Like, I think she's definitely shown herself to be the one who thinks about really giving. That's such a simple idea, but it's something that's really hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
To just really give without knowing that something's going to come back. Before we get to the three types of alchemy networks, one of the problems that we have when you're growing your own consulting business is that a lot of people are relying on either referrals, word of mouth, or relationships. Someone hears you speak and then they say, hey, Mike, can we meet for coffee, or can we talk? And whatever it is these days, virtual coffee. And then they say, Mike, I love what you're talking about. I love what you're doing. But like we have no bandwidth for this yet. But I think that 6 months from now, I'm sure we'll be ready. Could you get back to me in about 6 months? And you're not a slacker. You take the initiative. So after 5 months, you reach out and you say, hey, Bob, you asked me to get back to you around now. How, do you want to continue to pick up the conversation? And Bob says, Mike, oh man, I wish you'd gotten back to me last month. We just went with this other company, this competitor of yours, and you kick yourself, right? So because it takes a lot to maintain all these relationships, and it's also hard to know which one is going to pay off. Not all going to pay off, right?
Right.
So that and then the problem with referrals is that you don't seem to have much control over it, right? You're when they show up, and people struggle to figure out how can I actually facilitate or cause referrals more consistently. And having an alchemy network comprised of whoever, I'll give you the three in a minute, really makes that a lot easier. So for example, let's say you had a network of ideal clients. Well, let me just say the three networks. I'm probably drive people crazy like this. The three possible member types are, number one, colleagues, right? And that was the first network that I created, which is still running and growing every month. And we call that the JVMM. And it's people who are marketing and selling to the same audience as you. And everybody recognizes the value of, hey, if we help each other get in front of our audiences, the pie expands. Even though most of us are competitors in one way or another, to one degree or another, we all benefit when the pie expands, because there are more people in my audience, on my email list or social media followers. There are more people in my audience who will never buy from me for whatever reason, but they're there. And if they're there, they're looking for something, and they might be looking for you, and they might be looking for whoever, right? So, some people will never buy from any of us, and some people will buy from both of us, and some, will buy from you rather than me because they were looking for you all along. You're a much better fit, and that's totally fine. So that's one is colleagues. A second audience or member type for your network would be ideal clients. These are the people that you're looking to reach as potential clients. So it could be, in your case, senior executives of one kind or another, right? Where you're talking to them. And in the scenario that I started mapping out or painting before, what happens is Bob says to you, Mike, 6 months, right? And you say, Mike, I totally get it. I hear what you're saying. I could tell that it makes sense based on what you shared with me. Now, at this point, you have a few options of how to stay front and center with Mike. You could put him on your email list and send them those emails once a week, and maybe he's already on there. And that's a good thing. I definitely think you should do that. And to me, by the way, my approach to emails is like, you can do it respectfully, or you could do it disrespectfully in a manipulative way. I only have a problem with the manipulative way. I think that's what you mean too.
Yeah, I tried it. I confess.
Yeah.
I actually had to apologize to some people.
Yeah.
Now,
but that's part of learning. That's part of, that willingness to push the boundaries a little bit and see what happens. There's no way you could have learned what you had learned if you hadn't done that.
Right.
You hadn't tried it. And then you realize, oh, that wasn't good. Right. But now it's like, yeah, okay, no, that's really not for me. Otherwise, you might always wonder, right?
Yeah.
So the first way, you can put them on email list. So another thing you could do is you could send articles or a book and say, hey, I thought about you and I saw this, or this article, maybe think about maybe. The problem with that is it feels a bit forced usually. Maybe some people are masters at that, but for most people it feels kind of forced. And also it's all one way. It's one directional. You don't necessarily know what's going on. Well, what if, let's say you had an Alchemy network that was comprised of your ideal clients. So you say, hey, Bob, I get it. It makes a lot of sense. So you definitely, you've got a complete, this and that project or this and that stage, and then you'll be ready for what we're talking about. How about this though? Because you are dealing with issues X, Y, and Z, which are really weighing on you, like we talked about. I have this network, and it's a network comprised of people just like you in different companies, and we're focused on this, some big idea that the network is all about. It's one, $1,000 a year, $2,000 a year. That's it. And it's just a way, like if anything does come up, along the way, you get some input from me and from other people like you. These are precisely the kinds of people that you want to be having more conversations with. Why don't you join us? And they say, yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. Now you're in a two-way conversation, because 6 weeks later, you say, hey, Bob, let's get on a quick 10, 15-minute call so I can find out what you're focused on, because that helps me to direct the conversations in the network. And that's good for you as well as others. What's good for you, I presume, is also relevant for others. Now you have a reason. They've already invested with you. They spent $1,000, $2,000, not a lot, but now it's a whole different relationship. And now they're already getting to benefit from working with you. And then, maybe another 6 weeks later, or you hear something else, or now you're top of mind, or in a way that you can't be otherwise. It's a two-way relationship. 4 months later, you find out from conversations that they're ready. Now you're in there before the competitor. It's a marvelous way of leveraging relationships. It's a marvelous way of leveraging referrals, or making referrals more consistent. I don't know if we have time to go into that, but that's it's a similar idea.
I mean, the ideal client's fantastic. The colleague's fantastic. At some point in time, we need both of those, whether it's an official Alchemy network, and most likely we have those. So I was thinking to myself, if someone is in that spot where they're in corporate America, they should, and they're thinking about down the road, maybe going, don't wait till you make the jump. Start building those networks now. And that's actually how I got this. It came to a rub where I was in corporate sales, and I was also on the side doing my consultancy, but this kept on growing and growing and growing until the point where it was not that big of a drop to go from here to here and to go full on. And in a sense, I had a miniature non-recognized Alchemy network. Now, where do you host these? I think that's what a lot of people are thinking as they're listening. Is this a Facebook thing? Is this a LinkedIn? Is this?
Yeah.
I see you nodding your head on both of those. No.
Yeah, no, right. Shaking my head.
I'm so glad to hear.
No,
I Facebook.
No, I wouldn't do it on Facebook. I wouldn't do it on LinkedIn. I almost certainly wouldn't do it on Slack, with perhaps a very rare exception. I believe in an email-based conversation, and we use a Google group, which is like an old listserv type thing, although it has both email as well as a web-based interface. It's simple, and people handle their email in different ways, but everybody has email and everybody's checking it, except for maybe teenagers. But once they get into the work world, at least as things are today, you still need email.
Right.
And having a conversation with people on Facebook, Facebook groups, most people are in multiple Facebook groups that they never check.
Right.
And just the perception is different. But giving your email to a community of people, it's more of an intimate, it's just more intimate. It's really giving access in a certain sense, an access to you that you don't necessarily give it easily. And that's one of the things that actually I was working with a client on today, because he was concerned about, kind of bothering his members, new group members. So he was thinking of doing an online forum. And I'll tell you that this is part of what we sort through, because there's no one right answer here. Mm-hmm. We have to, I'm really not I don't get hung up on this is the right way to do it.
Right.
I don't think that's helpful for anybody. I really believe in let's try to get beneath the surface, uncover the timeless principles that are guiding what we're doing, mm-hmm. and let's figure out the best way to apply those principles to what you're trying to build. And when you get it right, you end up in a place where you're able to do something which is kind of magical, which is leverage relationships. Unless you, I will say this, unless you actually brought all those contacts together, which maybe you did, I don't know. you're building a network of people where you're in the center, but they don't necessarily know each other.
Right.
But when you bring them all together, now they all get to know each other and they all know that it's because of you. Now what happens is you're creating tremendous value for all of them.
Right.
And you don't have to be there all the time. So, people are always about scaling and scaling and scaling, and people try to scale relationships by sending all this nonsense garbage through LinkedIn messaging and all the other things. Like they're using technology to fake relationships. I believe that we should use technology in ways that allow us to leverage genuine relationships, not to fake it. And when there's something between, just one-to-one and scaling, which is, in my opinion, leverage. And if you bring your best colleagues or your ideal clients, or the third category, which we didn't get to, which is recommenders, you bring them together in a network in a way that becomes you're valuable for all of them, because you're curating who gets in. Like, it's not enough to just say, yeah, I'll pay the membership fee, but if you're not the right fit, you don't get in. And then you're making it easier for them to have conversations with each other. Curation and conversation. There's so much information available to everybody these days. We all need to continuously learn. There's always another, some other piece of information we do need to acquire, another skill. But for most of us, what will really make the difference is not that newest piece of information. It's a deeper understanding of things that we already know. And you get that in conversations with people who are on the same path with you, or maybe a little bit ahead, a little bit behind, with mentors, with coaches, as well as with students and clients. When you have the chance to actually, implement the things you know and learn, you always get better and better. And by inviting these people into your network, you're providing something that a lot of people don't have. There's so much connection out there, so much networking going on, but not enough genuine relationships. And the idea of a relationship is really simply this. It's just, we say, hey, you and I, if we combine our efforts and our forces in this or that way, we're both better off. So we are investing in each other's futures. We're tying, we're intertwining our futures in a sense. And that begins with a genuine interest in the other person. And say, hey, I see that this, or you're telling me this or that, I can actually help you over here. And there's a willingness to help, even if it's not a perfect tit for tat. It's not like, I'll do this for you if you do that for me. Sure, that's fine and where it makes sense. But sometimes you just got to be willing to, hey, I see an opportunity. Let me help you with that.
Right.
It'll come back sooner or later somehow.
Two books come to mind when you're talking about that. Go Giver by Bob Berg.
Yeah, I know Bob.
Very much.
Good guy.
Giving that. He wrote the foreword for my book, Lead with No Fear. And so I got a chance to just really talk to him. And he's that generous person about that.
He really is. Yeah.
That relationship first. And then a book from Patrick Lencioni. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's called Naked. And the idea of just start helping people. Put yourself out there. And although it's not the same that you're talking, neither one of those authors are the same. It's that whole attitude of, this is not me spreading out to everybody. And what I found out, even with that clickbaity email sequence, is you just got to be willing to churn through your email list. And that's what happened when I engaged that. People said no. But what you're talking about is so much more like, this is not just an email list. It's not just my virtual assistant writes up some stuff and sends it out. This is curated information that's helpful to people. So
it's introducing people to each other so that they have conversations while you're sleeping, and that's valuable to them.
Yeah, I was working with a couple CEOs and they were working on similar stuff, and I said, you got to meet this guy. You got to meet this guy. And they did. They connected, and they were able to relate and find out more about each other's products. And one was a little bit further on, and so he was able to encourage. It was that value that people came in, that network. There's so much here that I think that people need to go to the link profitablelationships.com/Mike Acker, ACKER, and I'll put that in YouTube and on the show notes for the podcast. Dov, this has been really interesting. My mind is going all over the place as well. I'm just thinking about this because obviously I'm in this space. I love the idea from corporate refugee, where people are thinking about what to do, to, yes, there can be life after corporate life if you want to. But I also think that so much of what we're talking about is relevant to the person who's still in that management position, that you don't have to go on LinkedIn and be part of every Facebook group. or mastermind, but creating some kind of network, even if you never use it. I mean, you were in your Alchemy network for 8 years before you started charging. So even if you never charge, but you're in that spot, get to know some people, and they might end up being a consultant that later on can help you. So take advantage of that as you're hearing what Dov is talking about, because there's so much here, and it's just relationships. That's what it ultimately is, and just really good relationships. Dov, where can people find you besides profitablelationships.com? What would you like to leave us with that would just go, man, this is what we need to learn?
Well, I mean, I just want to highlight one little point that I thought of while you're talking, which is that, and this is what the video training really highlights at the link, profitablelationships.com/Mike Acker, ACKER. And that is that you can actually turn a lot of the relationship marketing, so to speak, that a lot of people are already doing. You can turn that into a revenue stream, maybe just $50,000 a year, maybe $100,000 a year, maybe $200,000 a year. But and that comes from building a network with a $1,000 to $2,000 a year membership fee with your either ideal clients or colleagues or recommenders. And like you said, even if you do it for free, I got a lot of value out of what I was running for 8 years for free because people were promoting me. I mean, my main thing that I want to sell is my main thing, So this ended up, it just kind of developed. There was another thing that I thought, oh yes. And one other point, which is also reminded me, something that you said reminded me of this. The idea here is we talk, what's the idea of becoming an under the radar leader in your industry? You don't have to be the most visible person. It's wonderful to have a book. It's great. And you've done great. I mean, your book, Speak with No Fear, you've got 448 reviews here on Amazon. And that's like 4.5 stars. That's not easy to do. You must have pulled together something that's really good. So I'm going to have to go check that out. Speak with No Fear. But you can also become that under the radar industry leader if you have real relationships with 30, 40, 50, 100. Obviously, not everybody equally, right? But even up to, let's say, 150, which some research says is kind of the limit. If you have, let's say, 50 to 100 relationships with key people, well-placed people across your industry, whether it's colleagues or potential clients or recommenders, you're a force, whether anybody knows you exist by, whether other than those people or not. You're in a position where you could get on the stages you want to get on. You could be, you could be published where you want to, you can be introduced, you could be. Yeah. So there's anything else that you want to do. If you have a podcast, you can get the best guests. You can become a guest on others. Because when you build that, it's a foundation piece in any kind of marketing or visibility platform that you may want to build. So I'll just leave you with that.
Absolutely. And you gave me this quote, and I got to say it here right at the end. Dov says, the right relationships are an unfair advantage. The right relationships are your unfair advantage. So Let me leave that with not only with what Dov just said, and encourage you to check them out, profitablelationships.com/Mike Acker. However, I want to also say this, whether you're in corporate America, professional, small business owner, wherever this podcast, wherever this show finds you, build and invest in those right relationships, because I love what Dov says here. They present an unfair advantage to you. It might not be immediate, but then that wouldn't be a real relationship. But down the road, you'll see incredible benefits by really cultivating those relationships.
Well, I'd say it's a long-term strategy with immediate benefits, because there's always something that comes up. When you have a real conversation with somebody that says, oh, you should talk to so-and-so or something. So long-term strategy with immediate benefits.
I love it. Love it. A couple good one-liners right there. Hey, thank you so much. And we're going to have all these show notes in there, and people can check it out. I'll say it one last time, profitablelationships.com/Mike Acker. Joe, thanks so much for spending some time with me this morning for me.
Honored to be here. Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day. And for everybody on the show, remember to subscribe, like, comment, share with others, and to access the show notes. And we have a free spot at connect.stepstoadvance.com where we put resources for the podcast as well. Until next show, have a great week.
Thanks for listening to Advance with Mike Acker, a podcast designed to provide an edge for leaders through improving practical leadership skills and increasing confidence in speaking. Mike is a best-selling author and business owner who has helped many leaders increase their skills and their confidence, propelling them to new heights in their personal and professional endeavors. Join an incredible group of professionals taking the steps to become better leaders at connect.stepstoadvance.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.